One of the best things about pesto is its flexibility, because while the basic recipe typically calls for garlic, basil, pine nuts, olive oil, and Parmesan cheese, for most of those ingredients, substitutions are no big deal. For example, if you don't have pine nuts, try walnuts, or pecans, or even sunflower seeds. Basil's not your thing? No problem. Swap it with spinach. Want to make it dairy-free? Awesome! Replace the cheese with nutritional yeast, or like us, simply leave it out entirely. Heck, we can even cut the calories by ditching the oil and using water instead. Now, I'm sure that some purists wouldn't appreciate us messing around, but for everyone else, pesto ingredients are pretty much a free-for-all. Well, except for one, because no garlic means no pesto. But that doesn't necessarily mean that pesto must contain garlic cloves, because there's another piece of the garlic plant which, while it doesn't receive as much fanfare as its subterranean counterpart, certainly does deserve some consideration. And I'm of course talking about the long stems and flower buds, known as garlic scapes. Now, as you may recall from our previous video about our neglected garden, I mentioned that our garlic scapes were past their prime, and likely far too woody to eat. Well, as a result of that statement, a number of you have suggested that all was not lost, and encouraged us to still try them in a pesto. And we appreciated those comments because we've made garlic scape pesto in the past and loved it, but we also assumed that only the early scapes would work. But since the suggestion seemed so confident, we figured we'd give it a shot. And are we ever glad that we did? Because, big surprise, you guys were right. So in this video, we'll show you how we make a simple pesto using fresh-picked basil and garlic scapes. Now first of all, harvesting scapes is pretty simple. All you need to do is give them a snip. But since these ones are a bit older, we found that by bending the stem between your fingers, you could easily find the point where they become a little too hard, and cut there. Oh, and since we're already here, check out the liquid that's released when we make the cut. That's essentially garlic sap, sending nutrients up to the flower bud. So, much like other veggies, if we want larger growth down below, it's best to discourage any wasted energy up top. Hence why harvesting scapes is recommended even if you're not planning to eat them. Okay, next we need some basil. And as you can see, they're starting to flower as well. But that's okay, because basil flowers taste the same as the leaves, and by trimming them now, we can encourage the plant to become bushier in the future. All we need to remember is to trim the main stem right above one of these nodes, which will cause the pair of substems to become new main stems, and as a result, our basil plant will double its output, meaning more pesto for us. Okay, now that we've got our main ingredients, let's head inside. First things first, we'll give the scapes and basil a rinse, just to remove any bits of dust. Next, we'll slice off the buds. If these were younger and smaller, we probably wouldn't bother, but at this size, we've found that they add a bitter flavor to the pesto that we don't really care for. But once they're all removed, we'll coarsely chop the stems and then move on to the basil. As I mentioned, the basil flowers are perfectly edible, so we can leave them in. But it's a good idea to remove any of the thicker and woodier stems, and then give the remainder a quick chop too. And believe it or not, that's all the prep work required. So now we can lay out our entire set of ingredients. We have 2 cups of chopped basil, 1 cup of chopped scapes, about half a cup of walnuts, 3 tablespoons of extra virgin olive oil, and some salt and pepper to taste. If you want, you can also try toasting the walnuts for a few minutes in a dry pan. And if you have one handy, then you may want to prep a lemon for squeezing, just in case you need to add some liquid or choose to give our pesto a bit of a zing. But once all the ingredients are ready, just toss them all into a food processor and give her a spin. Partway through, you may find that you need to scrape down the sides a bit, and adding a couple tablespoons of that lemon juice or even some water may help give a smoother texture. But eventually, once your pesto forms into a gorgeous green paste, you're done. And that brings us to the second best thing about pesto. It's versatility. Because while I might happily eat it directly from a spoon, it also goes well on crackers, or pasta, or even as the sauce on a pizza. So if you haven't already, we hope that you give it a try too. But in the meantime, thanks for watching, and we'll see you soon.